The Xtalks Life Science Podcast is your source for all things pharma, biotech, medtech, healthcare, research, and more.
Hello and welcome to the Xtalks Life Science Podcast. I'm Ayesha Rashid, Senior Life Science Journalist at Xtalks.com. And this week, I am delighted to introduce our special guest on the show. With us, we have Dr. Ahmed Enayetallah, who is the Chief Development Officer at Dompé, which is a company founded as the first compounding pharmacy in Milan, Italy, which has grown over 130 years into a global biopharmaceutical company today. Currently, the company has a therapeutic pipeline focused on ocular diseases, including NAION. Dr. Enayetallah has a robust background in clinical research and deep expertise in drug development. His career has spanned several high-profile roles across leading pharmaceutical and biotechnology companies such as Amgen, Biogen, and Alexion. Prior to joining Dompé, he led the development organization at BlueRock Therapeutics. Dr. Enayetallah earned his medical degree from the University of Cairo and completed his PhD in pharmacology and toxicology at the University of Connecticut. To learn more about the work that Dr. Enayetallah is leading at Dompé, let's turn to him now. Thank you so much for being on the show with us today.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Really looking forward to the conversation. And I'd first like to start off by asking you a bit more about Dompé. Again, a very illustrious company with a long history. But first, today, before going a bit into the past, what are its current missions and goals? And then if you could also talk to us about its long history in this space.
Of course. And if you allow me, maybe I'll start with the background. So as you mentioned, we have, Dompé has over 130 years of legacy, starting from being the first compounded pharmacy in Milan. And then, of course, the evolution over more than 130 years, going through the different stages that you can imagine for a company with such long history. For the earlier phase of the company, leading brands in Italy and many other European countries and other countries around the world. And then, with a number of partnerships with companies like Biogen and Amgen, all the way to the state we're in today. So today, we have a very robust research organization and a discovery group that has been working on a number of molecules and really setting the foundation for the scientific universe that I believe we enjoy today. And then recently, the company led, a significant amount of research in neurotrophins. And neurotrophins are, naturally occurring proteins, such as nerve growth factor, which the company has been working on for a number of years. Nerve growth factor, which is really, it's central to the company's mission. It's very unique because it's naturally occurring, as I mentioned, and the characteristics and the functions are well known and native to the human body. Nerve growth factor is known to support the growth, differentiation, survival, and protection of neurons. So it's a very unique molecule to have a therapeutic based on naturally occurring molecule with very well described biology and the potential benefits from developing such therapeutics are supported by over 75 years of research. From the time of discovery of NGF in 1950s, and Nobel laureates, Rita Levi-Montalcini and Dr. Komen, back in the 80s, all the way till now. And over the many, many years, a lot of people and organizations and academics try to understand NGF and understand how to modulate or use it to target, a number of diseases. So there is a lot of, a large body of research for NGF. And of course, unlocking that potential, which Dompé finally was able to do after many other groups tried, and they helped advance the field and helped to put us where we are today. It became what I would say the current Dompé, the global biotech organization that, yes, there's 130 years of legacy and more, but I think what's coming is a lot more significant and robust.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that overview. And indeed, just seeing a company come such a long way and then really that evolution into what it is today. And it seems like, like any other cutting edge, new and upcoming biotech company, again, with the ideas and the concepts and the goals, essentially. So that's really, really wonderful to learn more about Dompé. And you mentioned that the NGFs are the core central kind of scientific therapeutic driving force behind the company currently. And so in what indications, I mentioned in the intro that the company is currently focused on ocular diseases like NAION. So could you tell us a bit more about the application of NGF-based therapeutics and targeting in those kinds of ocular diseases?
So I can tell you a little bit, of course. I'll tell you about some of the indications we're targeting today, and maybe a little bit more about the biology of NGF. And really, what motivated me and what excites me about being part of this journey here at Dompé. So as I mentioned, it's naturally occurring molecule. As I mentioned, its biology is well known and well studied. Nevertheless, there have been a number of challenges over the years, really prohibiting its therapeutic use and really trying to use it as a tool to target, neurological and related diseases. Part of it is manufacturing the molecule, the formulation to really manage and handle the molecule, and even the route of administration of NGF. For example, if you wanted to target neurological condition and you wanted to get the molecule past the blood-brain barrier, which is the barrier that protects the brain and prevents many molecules, especially large molecules like NGF, from crossing to the brain, as the challenge. And many scientists and others try to use NGF systemically. And of course, that can carry a number of challenges and hurdles, not to mention, that you're really not able to bring the molecule to where you want it to work, to bring the therapeutic to where you want it to work. Of course, if you want to administer it orally, it's a protein, so it gets broken down before it even gets to the blood. So that's not possible. So at Dompé, what they did, they started with an indication that affects the nerves in the cornea. So it's a disease condition where over time, the nerves, or, as a result of different types of injuries, patients lose the innervation in the cornea, and that leads to corneal disease, leads to erosion in the cornea and ulceration, and the potential to really even perforate the cornea and lose vision. So that was essentially kind of the easiest, most direct way of applying NGF as a therapeutic, where you apply it topically with the rationale of helping the nerves regrow and helping, closing that defect in the cornea. So essentially, that was kind of proof of concept that applying NGF to diseases of neuronal basis or ecology could work. Now, the challenge is, how do you extend that further? How do you go and address other conditions that are also based on nerve damage or loss of innervation beyond the front of the eye? And that's kind of the challenge that I described earlier. How do you get the molecule to where you want it to work? So if you wanted to address other conditions, for example, in the back of the eye, it's hard to get the molecule back there. Systemically, again, we said it's not possible. It's possible to inject it directly inside the eye, but you can imagine how invasive that is. And of course, a lot of challenges come with that and potential risks and complications. And even to the brain, in some cases, people suggested to actually inject it directly into the fluid that surrounds the brain or the spinal cord, even more invasive. And you can imagine the risks that could come with that. So Dompé really kind of innovated in that space by coming up with the intranasal route of administration, which is, a technology that is patented by Dompé. Essentially, you can use kind of a spray or an atomizer where you spray NGF into the top of the nasal cavity, and then you get around the blood-brain barrier challenge, and now you're able to get NGF to other parts of the brain and back of the eye, and that really unlocks, the potential for NGF to address many other neurological and ophthalmological conditions. So I think this is kind of the breakthrough and how I see the systematic approach to first proof of concept, easy to apply, topical, corneal disease, and then finding a way to get NGF to where we want it to work in other conditions. So now that we have this technology, which again, we're still, testing in human studies, we're going after many of the challenging conditions, many of the diseases. And I usually tell people, it's almost like we're going after the disease areas that most other companies run away from. The reason is because, there are diseases that are hard to treat, and many tried over the years. And because of the nature of, nerves and the nature of the neuronal biology, most of them don't really regenerate or hard to regenerate. So once you start the cascade of degeneration or neuronal death, it's hard to bring them back, and sometimes it's even hard to protect them from further damage. So NGF is allowing us to go into such areas. It's allowing us to go into such underserved patient populations. And you mentioned NAION or NAION, which is non-arteritic ischemic optic neuropathy. And it's a good example. It's a disease where, it's first of all, it's the most common acute optic neuropathy in adults above 50. Most of the time, patients, wake up with sudden loss of vision, which you can imagine how scary that is. It's a condition that's on the rise. Initial reports, show about 6,000 to 7,000 patients a year. More recently, I've seen reports saying up to 34,000 patients a year. And it's associated with a lot of general or systemic conditions and disorders that are also on the rise. So there's association with cardiovascular disease, association with age, association even with some drugs. So recently, reports linking it to GLP-1 drugs, linking it to PDE5 drugs, drugs that are commonly used, medications that are commonly used nowadays, and their use is on the rise. So also, there is nothing approved for this condition. So no FDA-approved drugs for NAION. So you can imagine an underserved patient population. The outcome is devastating. Most patients end up with vision loss that is irreversible. It doesn't go back, it doesn't resolve. And it's on the rise, and very few are working on it. So it's a disease area that's very hard to treat, and the field acknowledges that. Dompé is in a unique position to be able to potentially, and we're working on that, move the needle by applying NGF and by applying the novel intranasal route of administration. The optic nerve, as you can imagine, is back of the eye. It's really boxed all the way in this tight space and hard to get to. And we believe that the intranasal route of administration can get NGF there. And if we get it there in time, and if it does what it does, which, helps neurons and nerve fibers to survive and protects them and potentially help recover some of them, we could potentially address such devastating condition, whether by preventing the vision loss or even helping the recovery of vision in those patients. So, it couldn't be more exciting. And NAION is one of many similar diseases that we are addressing using NGF and the intranasal route of administration.
Wow, that is so fascinating. And really, thank you so much for laying out the entire sort of ecosystem around this and how you built really from the proof of concept through to a novel-ish route of administration still, in terms of talking about conventional therapeutics. And so I think that's so fantastic, and really hats off to the team at Dompé for this and for yourself leading really this innovative initiative in terms of and really helping patients who are suffering from diseases like NAION. And I was going to ask you about some of the unmet needs. And so thank you so much for highlighting all of those and all of the complications and how patients suffer. And I think this is really tremendous work in terms of a potential therapeutic that can really improve the quality of life. And of course, by addressing the pathology, the underlying pathology of the disease. And I know that you mentioned that this has so many applications, and the eye was a great place to start given the reasons that you did. But where do you see something like this expanding to in the near to immediate future after ocular diseases? Do you also see it in applications where you have any kind of nerve damage, neuropathies, where you have, whether it's in extremities or other parts of the body as well?
Spot on. You're essentially laying out the strategy we're following here, right? So, of course, we have an intensive research going to identify other conditions where there's the potential for NGF to help patients or patient populations who are suffering from serious conditions like NIN, and also conditions where nothing is available or approved. Another example, which actually is an entire new therapeutic area for Dompé. So Dompé's initial work was focused on the eye, right? We talked about corneal disease and then moving to back of the eye, the optic nerve, so the optic neuropathy. And NIN is one of multiple optic neuropathies. So even, succeeding there or showing proof of concept there would allow us to open up into other optic neuropathies. But we're actually pursuing indications beyond the eye. So, imagine, front of the eye, back of the eye, now go deeper into the brain. We're starting to look into conditions, and we actually have active programs right now in conditions such as cerebral palsy. And this is an ongoing clinical study, just started about a month ago. And it's a condition where children, usually young children in the range of 2 years old, 5 years old, 6 years old, they have this type of motor dysfunction, and it's very characteristic. First, you have loss of motor function and delayed development and sometimes a spastic type of loss of function, of paralysis. And similarly, no available treatment, and a lot of the patients go through the different stages from limited mobility to even becoming bound to wheelchair and worse. And you can imagine a condition like this affecting children and its impact on children, its impact on their families, its impact on caregivers, with no available or approved treatments as of now. And, some research over the many years in the past, um, you know, came with, including some clinical anecdotes, right? So a number of professors in Italy, they ran, limited clinical studies, and the outcome from such anecdotes, I say anecdotes because they weren't large controlled studies, so we have to be careful interpreting them. But the anecdotes are encouraging, or at least warrant, further investigation in conditions related to cerebral palsy where the brain is affected at young age. And what they did is they used NGF intranasally, and they looked at changes in the brain physiology and some other markers, and the changes they detected, as I mentioned, point to the potential of NGF in conditions like this. So, of course, that combined with a lot of preclinical data that we ran at Dompé, like I mentioned, we have an amazing discovery and research group, and combined with the literature, 75 years of literature in NGF, we were able to really put a package together that supports further investigating NGF in cerebral palsy. So this study is, we just initiated the study and about to enroll the first patients there. But it's similar to what I said earlier, right? It's an underserved patient population. It's a serious, devastating condition, huge impact, and there is the potential for NGF there based on, the data we have so far. Again, if successful, you can imagine how this could be transformative for such patient population and their families and caregivers.
Indeed. And it kind of brings me back to what you mentioned earlier about how people were escaping these kinds of very difficult disease areas, essentially escaping the fire, but you're running right into it. So, which is courageous, fantastic, and as they say, the heroes of the day. So yeah, amazing work. And cerebral palsy, you know what? I've done so many of these podcasts, 200 plus now, and this is the first time that this specific disease area has come up. So that just goes to show how much unmet need there is, beginning with really a lack of focus on some of these disease areas.
And I mean, if you allow me to add, again, this is really one of other neurological conditions where we're going in. I mean, this one is a pediatric neurological condition. We're also looking at other conditions in adults, such as traumatic brain injury, which is another big area. Again, a lot of unmet need, and it's very heterogeneous. And we think that NGF, because of its nature and kind of addressing common, underlying pathophysiology, it really has the potential of the advantage of, again, providing benefit regardless of the initial injury or regardless of the location or the type of injury. Unlike, many of other therapeutics, which are very targeted and very specific and even hard to study in a heterogeneous patient population. The other thing, the way we are setting up our pipeline, and it took a lot of thinking and really thoughtfulness, we're designing it to help advance the field, not only to address disease areas or not only pursuing indications, but the studies we design, whether preclinical studies or clinical studies, they're designed in a way to inform next steps. So essentially, from that TBI study, which it's, an amazing piece of science. And hopefully in the future, we talk more about the details of a study like this. But it's looking at, the different modalities of measuring, the disease at baseline and measuring the disease as it evolves, and how NGF might affect the different aspects of the disease, with, the latest methods of, classifying and categorizing TBI being such a heterogeneous population. The information would get out of this not only could help us best position NGF, but also help us with, direct us for what is the best next step. Where do we go next with the better understanding following such scientific study? So we can talk about the indications and how difficult they are, and how, the serious nature of the conditions and the unmet need, and the fact that nothing approved for most of the indications we go on. But the caliber of the science and the talent we have and the researchers we have designing experiments to help move the entire field, it's really, really unique. And that's why I am enjoying it so much.
Indeed. And I think you mentioned earlier about contributing or adding to the scientific universe. And that's essentially where I think it all begins. Science-driven drug discovery. If you don't understand the underlying mechanisms, then your therapeutics are only going to be as good. And so I think really that scientific driven thought is so essential. And I think in recent decades, with the technologies that we now have, I feel like there have been significant leaps in our understanding of disease biologies. And what are your thoughts on that? How far has the field come in understanding some of these kinds of diseases, and how much further do we need to go, and where are we heading with better understanding these kinds of diseases?
Very good point. And you probably know that, neurology and ophthalmology, neurology in particular, has been one of the toughest areas, right? Over the years, you hear companies trying to go after neurological conditions, and most of the time, things don't work as well, and they decide to stop working in neurology altogether. So it has been one of the areas where, today there's the highest unmet need, a lot of trials and failures, and but I think the time is probably about right now, with all of the things we learned, and the technological advances to overcome many of the hurdles that we came to understand in neurology, and even the innovation around molecules like NGF. I believe things are coming together. Diagnostics are better. Technologies in general are better. Understanding that heterogeneous diseases, you cannot truly go after how they present only. You cannot go with the symptoms only. It's best to understand the underlying pathology and go deeper. And many recent papers show and talk about how to best classify and understand such conditions. So I think we are at an interesting intersection where the pieces are coming together. The understanding of the different disease areas, the understanding of the underlying pathology, the advances in diagnostics, technologies, prognosis, even patient monitoring. And I say we have all the pieces right now, and maybe I'm exaggerating when I say all. And if we don't do it, it's only us to blame. So hopefully we're able to do something meaningful. But you're absolutely right. We advance so much that I think the probability of succeeding in some of those disease areas is much higher than 10, 20, 30 years ago.
And looking at the therapeutic side of things, what are sort of again, things have come a long way. Absolutely. We're seeing the advent of, proof of concept treatments like gene therapies now coming to fruition with so many recent approvals in various areas. And in terms of that side of things, therapeutic development, where we talk about not just the science, but then also the regulatory side and all of those things. So what is the landscape of drug development today, and what are the challenges, and I also like to say the opportunities. So if they're flip sides of the same coin. So what are your thoughts on that?
No, right. I mean, you're right. I mean, drug development, it's not just the science. It's not just, running clinical trials and trying to find the best way to run them. There are a lot of other pieces. And you mentioned, regulatory and health authorities. And overall, I think it's a collective effort. We have to work together, right? We have to work together on reducing the time from the bench to bedside, for example, right? Which, people have been trying to work on for a long, long time. NGF is case in point. A molecule that, discovered in 1950s, 75 years. And not till very recently, a few years ago, we're able to unlock its potential in one condition. Yet, I believe the potential is there for a lot more conditions. But we're working on reducing the time from discovery to development, and even identifying the most efficient way to test, new therapies in humans. And of course, we have to do that without compromising on the quality and, the type of work we do. But regulatory is also the regulatory, in terms of regulatory authorities like the FDA, things have been evolving. And I think NAION is a perfect example. The review cycle and the interaction with health authorities, always, or most of the time is challenging. It takes a long time. The review periods are long. And I think some of the recent changes we're seeing from the FDA and, the voucher, for example, the commissioner's national priority voucher is a great example here. If we can reduce the time, if we can enhance the partnership with health authorities, and if we can identify better ways and more efficient ways to bring, potential or therapies, like potential therapies like NGF to patients sooner, it's amazing. And when Dompé was awarded the voucher for the NAION program, first of all, we looked at it as, some form of, external validation of the type of work we do, the significance of the NGF biology, and even the unmet need and the seriousness of NAION, right, vision loss. And you can put it in a way, sometimes I think about it in terms of patients, right? Because at the end of the day, it's all about patients. So the voucher helps us, of course, with enhanced, communication with the health authorities and better alignment on the best path to test and put together a package that shows and confirms the efficacy and safety in such a condition. But imagine you save a year on the review period alone, right? The voucher shrinks the review period from about 1 year to maybe 1 or 2 months. If we go back to the rate of NIN every year, right? I mentioned, thousands of patients every year. So delaying, or maybe we'll, flip it to the positive side. If you can bring, such a potential therapeutic to patients 1 year earlier, you are helping thousands of patients, either preventing vision loss or reducing vision loss, or even preserving vision in such patient population. So the significance of finding ways to develop and bring therapeutics faster to patients has a real impact, right? This is not a theoretical or hypothetical exercise. It's real. And I'm really glad that we're addressing it on all fronts. We're finding ways to accelerate preclinical research, finding ways to transition from the bench work to human studies, finding ways to work with health authorities better and to shorten review periods. So again, back to the earlier point, I think things are coming together. Things are moving in the right direction, and it's really adding to the excitement that we have here at Dompé.
Indeed, I think that's definitely the common theme here, that the pieces are coming together. So it's definitely an exciting time. And you mentioned that partnerships with regulatory health authorities, how those have been only strengthening, and with all of the different pathways, especially in the rare disease space as well. Like, you really see a lot more focus and a lot more incentive and intention, I feel, really to accelerate and bring therapies to patients. And like you said, even a year faster, even months faster, it makes a huge difference. Yeah. And within that ecosystem, I wanted to also ask you about other partnerships, really in building something like this. When we talk about partnerships either with bigger pharma companies or smaller biotechs, CROs, CDMOs, it's a whole ecosystem, patient advocacy groups, and so and academia as well. So who are sort of those players, and what kinds of partnerships, if any, is Dompé currently engaged in or looking to pursue in the near future?
I mean, the shortest answer is all of the above. Of course, we work with CROs, and we work with academic centers and major academic centers. We work with the top KOLs in the field. The things we do and the nature of the conditions we're after. We cannot do it alone. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier. I'm a believer in the collective effort, in the collective intelligence. We have to do things together, and otherwise you can't really, go after or have a mission where you're targeting some of the most challenging conditions in areas with the highest failure rate in drug development. We cannot do that alone. So we have to hold hands together. We're open to partnerships across the board. We are talking to, the experts, whether experts who had experience running similar trials before, or experts who have been dealing with the patients. It's very important, of course, nowadays. And I think, you must have heard that before, but the patient voice now is an essential part in any drug development program, and it is really helpful, right? I mean, when I think about the many examples that I faced myself, where the patient input in the study design, or the patient input on how we design, the visits, in a clinical study, and even how to sequence the different measures and the different ways of testing things, it adds a lot to the technical success, right? And I think everyone now is on the same page, where we have to understand the patient's perspective, what's important to them, and by doing a lot of that, because we're scientists, right? And in drug development, we know that not every program works and not every clinical trial is successful. But by doing so, by working on certain disease areas, especially rare diseases, as you mentioned, which NAION is one of them, you're raising awareness, right? You're raising awareness. You're advancing the scientific field. You're contributing to the work that many other scientists are and have been doing. So the type of work we do, we have to work together. and we have to partner and we have to hold hands. And it's also another reason why I love what we do. When we get together, it's really a lot more collaborative than you would think, which is amazing.
Yeah, having a common goal and driven by the patients, essentially, I think. Nothing is more robust and stronger than that. And in terms of developing good teams, I mean, you've had extensive experience in the biopharmaceutical space, leading teams, projects at companies like Amgen, Biogen, Alexion. And so what are the learnings from those experiences, and how have those translated at Dompé in terms of the work that you're leading there, the very, very fantastic and important work that you're leading there today?
I mean, huge, right? And I think for Dompé in particular, if you think about it, Biogen, Amgen, Pfizer, Alexion, previous companies I worked with, I worked in different modalities, companies, very different profiles, from large, pharmaceuticals like Pfizer to smaller companies like Alexion, different ways of working, different models. And I think, to me, it's almost like over the years, I was able to build this toolbox of understanding all the different ways of doing things and the different approaches and the different mentalities and how things are done when you have specialists for every little thing in bigger companies, and also the opposite model where smaller companies, you have to wear multiple hats and it's much leaner. So bringing all of that to Dompé, where now I have this toolbox and I can really pick and choose and mix and match what are the right pieces to form the model that is customized for Dompé, the model that is best fit for the challenges we face that are specific to the indications in the pipeline we have. So absolutely, the experience I gained from working at all those companies is huge, right? And it's something that I'm grateful and fortunate to have gone and through such experience and learned what I'm enjoying today, and hopefully passing that information and learnings to other. It also helps you because it's a very small field, right? And after some time, you're running into the same people over and over again. Especially in neurology and ophthalmology, and that helps you put together, and it's really organic. It's not like one person is picking people to work with them, but you kind of organically, and I say that, it's always about people at the end of the day. So when you organically form kind of the best team based on years of experience and years of interactions and years of knowing each other and knowing which talent do you need at the different stages and to address, the different gaps, and again, very customized and specific to Dompé and the pipeline we have. So it feels like, this is the moment where you apply all the learnings and the network and the people and help bring that together and hopefully to a great cause, and hopefully we can do something amazing for patients who are truly, truly underserved.
Absolutely. And so in terms of milestones, as we talk about, what are some of the milestones that you're looking most forward to in the coming months this year, beginning of the year, Q1 and through to Q4, but also, longer term plans and goals. And so what are those for Dompé and for yourself right now?
We're very ambitious. Let me start there. We have a number of studies that just started, and 2025 has been an amazing year in terms of planning and putting the strategy and initiating a lot of the clinical studies that we have today in the pipeline. So the priority for 2026 is essentially execute on all the studies across the board. It's a very rich pipeline, and certainly for the size of a company like Dompé, very lean. So that's number one. So milestones in 26 are going to be related to the execution on the pipeline we have. And hopefully, 27 and beyond, we start, seeing some of the readouts and potentially, if we got good results, we start hearing about, submissions and we're doing our best to try and bring, meaningful therapeutics to patients. So the next 2 to 3 years, I think, will be critical for Dompé. We have a number of milestones and hopefully you'll hear about them and we'll talk about them again.
Absolutely. We're definitely going to be keeping an eye out at all of the amazing, fantastic work that is being led by people like yourself. And we'll definitely be keeping a watch out for all of those milestones and a lot more at Dompé here at Xtalks. And Dr. Enayetallah, I just want to thank you so much once again for your time, for your insights, and for sharing all of the amazing work that you're leading at Dompé in the space of NAION, in the space of rare diseases like ocular diseases and in neurology. And I just wish you all the best and thank you once again. And like I said, we will definitely keep an eye out for all of the milestones. And thank you once again for being on the show with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for having me.
All right, that's the end of this episode of the Xtalks Life Science Podcast. If you liked today's show, which I'm sure you did, please don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. Thank you, everyone, and we will see you next week. Bye for now.
Visit xtalks.com to join the life science community and unlock exclusive access to editorial content, webinars, networking opportunities, and more. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the speakers sharing them and should not be taken as professional advice, nor do they necessarily reflect the policies or positions of Honeycomb Worldwide. For more information, email us at podcast@xtalks.com.